Well, the Seahawks made a big, maybe surprising roster move by releasing Noah Fant. And Dave, I feel like, you and I talked about this a bunch yesterday on the show. People can go back and check that out on the podcast page. But I felt like we disagreed a bit on his impact on this team. Back when they were, before the draft, and we were looking at their salary cap space and going, man, they've got to find a way to make some room. We were going through guys like, well, this guy's probably going to get cut. This is probably a good restructure. And every time we had that conversation, Noah Fant was a big part of it, because at that time, I think he had the third highest salary on the team, or fourth. He was in the top 5. Relative to his production, it seemed very lopsided. So we thought, all right, they'll restructure him. Fast forward, they didn't do anything. They didn't release him. They didn't restructure. And then we find out yesterday they released him, and they saved close to $9 million in cap space. So I looked at it and said, well, that makes sense to me, because he was one of the higher paid guys on the team, yet his production over 3 seasons was pretty minimal when we're looking at stats. 5 touchdowns total,
right?
1,400 receiving yards. We talked about it. That's a decent year for Kelsey, minus touchdowns.
Yeah. Well, I think on this one, I kind of trusted my eyes. I mean, like the example I made yesterday was that if you look at Devin Witherspoon, his stats don't blow you away. And I feel like that's the same thing with Noah Fant. There were so many times last year where I looked at Noah Fant, and first of all, I did think that $9 million may be a lot for him. So, and maybe they tried to restructure with him, but there was lots.
They probably tried to trade him, right? Don't you think? That's
Probably.
why they waited this long. They signed Arroyo. They got Arroyo in.
Yeah.
I can't help. I don't know, but I'm just guessing maybe they were trying to work a trade and couldn't get one.
Yeah. But getting back to like what my eyes tell me, there were just so many times last year where like, oh, that was a great catch. Oh man, he shook that guy in man-to-man coverage. That was a really good block. So yeah, I think his stats didn't really tell the tale. But, I mean, that's probably what the Seahawks were citing when they talked about, doing a restructure or, taking a pay cut there. So, yeah. And then the other thing that I think, just looking at the tight end position and how important it is with this offense. And if you go back and look at what Kubiak did last year in New Orleans, they had 480 snaps where they had multiple tight ends, which is 12 personnel. First number is running back, second number is tight end. And then 13 personnel and 22 personnel, which is 2 running backs, 2 tight ends. So, just as far as the depth. But the other thing that it could be is that when he was drafted, and I'm not sure, there was a few people that said this, that the comp when they drafted Elijah Arroyo was Noah Fant.
Yeah.
And so, maybe they think, hey, this is redundant. We have that guy that we got in the draft. The thing is, going back to what my eyes tell me, Noah Fant I thought was a pretty good blocker, a surprisingly good blocker, and Elijah Arroyo, that's not his wheelhouse, really. I mean, he can definitely develop into a good blocker, but yeah, so I'm just looking at the numbers, because what they have now is A.J. Barner, who I love. I think he is going to develop into a very well-rounded tight end. And then they have the rookie Elijah Arroyo, who really is more like an ex-receiver, the way that they want to use him. And then after that, they got the veteran Eric Saubert, who has been around in the league. He was a 5th rounder. So tight end, just a very important position on this team. And that's the thing I think that surprised me. Not so much the salary cap, and I figured they might restructure, but who knows how that conversation went, and then maybe they tried to trade him, as you said. But I just think, the Seahawks last year had 202 snaps with multiple tight ends. So, the Saints 480. They're going to use tight ends, and I'm looking at, they've got those 3 guys that I just mentioned, and then they got a couple of other guys, that are in camp. So maybe there's going to be a corresponding move. That was my first thought, that they're going to maybe sign another tight end or trade for them. But yeah, I thought that was interesting from that standpoint. And although in the beginning I was like, yeah, Noah Fant might be a guy who's a cap casualty, but once it happened and I looked at all the numbers with the amount of usage of tight ends, I'm like, yeah, what are you going to do there? You don't have a lot of depth. But you could say the same thing about inside linebacker, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, and I'll just say this in closing. I guess I'm deferring to McDonald, because we sort of, all last season praised his decisiveness. When he sees something that's wrong, he
Yes.
doesn't sit there and wait and go, well, hopefully it's going to work itself out. Let's give it time. No, he signed 2 linebackers in the offseason.
Yeah.
And in the middle of the season said, nope, they're not my guys. Got rid of both of them in the middle of the season. Had an offensive coordinator. He picked himself for his first year as a head coach, gave him 1 year, said, nope, it's not my guy.
Right.
Got rid of him. So he's very decisive, and I would assume that holds true for this move. So I'm sort of leaning into his conviction and feeling like, you know what, we're fine without him, or he doesn't fit what we want to do, or whatever the disconnect may have been with Noah Fant, and going, all right, this guy he's a man of conviction. He knows exactly what he wants to see and how it should look, and if somebody doesn't fit, regardless of what their name is, it's not going to work.
Yeah, and I think that gets us back to the theme of this year. Really, is coaching. I mean, you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator. You've got, new offensive line coach, new quarterback coach. Yeah, I mean, it's you're really trusting a lot that McDonald is making the right, as you said, decisive moves, and I love that about him. Sure worked with those 2 inside linebackers when they got Ernest Jones in here.
There you go. Big move for the Seahawks. Is there a big corresponding move? We're going to wait and see.